Roll, please.
Ben Matt,
Present.
Al Eckert,
Here.
Richard Gagnon,
Here.
Thomas McWilliams,
Here.
Rusty Moss.
Here.
Wood. You have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we would like to review and approve the July 25th, 2025 Commission meeting minutes. Are there any additions, changes by anyone? Anyone want to make a motion for approval? So Wes, thank you. A second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. All right, next thing is our Chief Administrator report. Ms. Taylor, good morning.
Good morning. I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah,
Apologize.
I didn't know if you were going to make it or not.
Apologize for that back and forth. So the Power District 4 had previously requested a higher business plan rate, and we had assumed that would be on the ALC agenda today. And we heard that members had some questions, and so I wanted to make sure that I was available for that. But UTP4 decided to pull that request for now while they go through procurement. So you may see something later on that. They have initiated that procurement process with the state. So they're just holding back on that for now, on the business plan rate. But I did want to share where we were at this week. Basil and some Office of Water Quality folks and myself were in Cave Springs this week at the Illinois River Watershed Partnership building, and for the Arkansas River Compact Commission. Some members of Secretary Williams' team were there as well. And so we look forward to that every year. You know, the phosphorus trends in that basin are going down, and so we like to see that. And I was able to share some good news there that I'd like to share with you all. We received from EPA the withdrawal letters from their 2022 objections to the NACA and Springdale permits. And we also received 3 other withdrawal letters from the other facilities that they objected to that were not in our lawsuit. They were filed after we had filed our lawsuit with NACA and Springdale objection. So we're really excited to be able to move forward with those permits, protective permits, and get this, the phosphorus issue with the point source moving forward in a way. Instead of utilizing these old permits, we can move forward with protective, relevant permits. And so we're really excited about that. It's refreshing to work with EPA now. Instead of being in opposition, we can work together and solve these goals, these problems. And so we also shared some of the regionalization projects that we have been made aware of in that region. That's just a really great way to reduce phosphorus in the area. So some of these smaller plants that have connected to facilities like NACA or Springdale, where they were once discharging between 5 and 8 milligrams per liter phosphorus, now they're to a plant that's discharging less than 1. And so that's a really great way for Point Source to be able to reduce that nutrient in the watershed. And so we're happy to hear or share that good news there with them and learn about what Oklahoma is doing in the basin and our other partners in the state. And so it's always a great couple of days there. I did share with you guys the Taneytown Comprehensive Air Sampling Study with a little bit of a summary of what we've already shared. And so if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. I can give you a brief summary there. In April of 2024, there was another sampling event that detected 5 compounds over the RSL. And so the goal with this study this year was to try to determine the source of those. And so the study was designed, and there were categories, whether the compound, if identified, was either most likely from the landfill, from another source, that sort of thing. And so of the 50 compounds sampled for, 36 were identified. And they all had an identified source. I mean, the source may be unknown, but it was either likely the landfill, or possibly the landfill, or possibly another source, or undistinguishable from background. And so there were 2 compounds identified as likely from the landfill, benzene and ethylbenzene, meaning they had a statistically significant decrease as you go out from the landfill in the downwind range. Downwind at that time, that day, they sampled meteorological data on site every day. And so they made a determination for downwind each day. So of those 2 compounds, and then there were about 9 possibly from the landfill. We have been working with Department of Health, and we have asked them to use this data and assess it for public health. And so we do have their executive summary, and it is posted on our website. We do expect a full report at a later time. And so we'll have more information from that. They also did a real-time response and an odor survey, and they identified 4 locations in the community that have persistent odors. And so one of them was a lift station, one of them was just on the road right in front of the landfill or right behind the landfill, and then also at a gas station. And so those odors and those responses were also compared to that real-time 1-hour grab sample there. And the compounds detected in the 1-hour grab sample were not anything different that were detected in the 24-hour samples. And so there was not any conclusions that the odors were causing any sort of elevated levels at the time of that sample. However, there were persistent odors at those locations. And so we have already been looking into that lift station there in Town because it is exclusively receiving leachate. And so we are working with the city, and we'll work with Waste Management on that particular odor location. And then also we did ask for the RNG plant data, just to make sure that it was running. There was a report that it was down for 2 hours that first morning there. There was a power outage. And then also we did try to use the same sampling locations as we did in the April 2024. Where we could, we did expand more and have a broader background range. And so with that, there was a detection of a compound, acrylonitrile. It was not identified as from the landfill, possibly from another source, because the locations where it was detected were 4 miles south at a background location and a couple of miles north at a previous background location as well. But that was the only compound detected above U.S. ambient national, the background levels. And so the Department of Health will look into that further. Are there any questions on the study?
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of questions, I guess. I got your email, read through that. I appreciate that. I thought it was interesting, in the way the studies, I guess, conclusions, where you refer to, I guess, categories of like most likely, possible. Are these based on like a numeric number where you got a chart or something that tells you how that works?
Yeah.
I'm just asking for education purposes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In the study, they go through the criteria for what determines most likely from the landfill, likely from the landfill, possibly not distinguishable from background. They go through that. And so likely from the landfill, I believe it was statistically significant difference in downwind fence line sample of the landfill and community. Basically, the concentration decreases as you get further from the landfill. That would indicate likely from the landfill.
Okay.
Possibly from the landfill means the concentration is detected higher at the fence line downwind and decreases as you go out. However, not at a statistically significant difference.
Okay. But this criteria, is this something that was previously established by EPA or something? I'm just asking. I don't know. I'm not familiar with this one.
Not to my knowledge. CTEH came up with it prior to the study.
I understand. Okay. Thank you. Also on the odor part, I mean, I assume you guys were doing this just to try to identify the source of whatever the problem is, because it's not regulated, is my understanding. Odor's still sort of a private right of action.
Correct. Correct.
So,
But odor can be indicative of a problem, and so we wanted to respond to those odors or have the contractor respond to those odors and take an immediate sample to see if the odor was associated with any sort of elevated compound that could be causing any sort of impact. And so that's what that was for. It did not show any elevated compounds at the time. There were nothing different than the 24-hour samples in the same location at the same time. So that, but we are able to take those 4 locations where there were prominent odors and try to see if there's something else that could be contributing to those odors and try to resolve that problem.
thank you very much. Any other commissioners have any questions?
Yeah, so in the previous study that was done in 2024, it had benzene and acrylamide, is that how you pronounce that? I didn't have time to look in the charts on this recent study. Was that compound acrylamide in it as well?
Yes, sir, it was detected and it was determined to be not likely from the landfill. Not distinguishable from background air. So that means that it was detected very similar in the background concentrations, which exceeded like 4 miles from the landfill, and there were 4. So statistically speaking, they did not show any difference near the landfill versus in the background of the community.
So the odor they refer to also the rotten egg, that's referred to often in the oil and gas industry associated with hydrogen sulfide, low doses of hydrogen sulfide. In the previous study, there wasn't any hydrogen sulfide. What about this latest one? Again, I said I didn't have time.
That was not sampled for. It was not detected in previous studies, and so therefore was not included in this one.
Any other questions? All right, one more. You know, in your email, you said, you know, you've requested Department of Health to provide this public health assessment. And have you gotten a timetable on that, or any feedback from them yet on that?
I don't. We did receive the executive summary. It doesn't go into all the detail. It has kind of just a global summary of it. So I don't know exactly when they expect to have the full report. I think very soon, but I don't know exactly.
All right, can you fill us in on that when you get it?
Certainly.
All right.
Certainly.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple, if I could.
Go ahead, Charles.
I don't typically do it, but I can. So one of the issues I wanted to get clarification on, or at least clear for the commission, was reading the newspaper article about this study. There was a claim, and I may have misread it, that there were no odors detected from the landfill. And this study indicates that that is not correct. There were odors detected from the landfill, which wouldn't be a surprise because I've never been in contact with a landfill that doesn't smell. I wanted to get clarification for the benefit of the commission and from the chief, what this study is. This is a study of the air quality near the landfill. It's not an epidemiology study, correct?
Correct.
And Doctor, if you could provide clarification between what an epidemiology study is and what an air study is, I'm sure everybody.
An epidemiologist studies, exposure and risk. And so we've received the data in the same report, and we had 3 recommendations, one of which was to try to identify the source of the acrylonitrile. The second one is, we're going to go ahead and do, as you mentioned, a review. And we follow, there's a CDC, Agency for Toxicology, Substance and Disease Registry. They have protocol as to how you evaluate this, and that's what an epidemiologist will do. They'll follow these steps, and each step, as you go down, at some point, we'll do it for all the compounds, not just the ones that are a little bit elevated. And we'll make a determination as to if we think there's a public health risk. And that report will be provided and made available to everybody.
And Commissioner, could you explain the distinction between acute toxicity versus chronic toxicity? Because looking at the study, it appears that the levels in terms of CDC guidance are below acute toxicity, but the study doesn't seem to mention anything about chronic toxicity levels. Is that something the Department of Health is going to get into?
So exposure can be long-term, like your life expectancy, you know, if you're exposed to something repeatedly for 30+ years, or there could be short-term exposure, right? And so we'll review all that. I don't want to get into any of that too much, but we will review all that, and it'll be broken down, not only for like long-term or short-term, but it'll also relate to specific groups, like particularly maybe pregnant women, they may be at risk for children. So we'll evaluate that for all those groups. Acute.
Commissioner McClellan, thank you so much. I meant to visit with you about this ahead of time, so I didn't jump you on the questions.
I don't want to jump ahead of our report,
Right.
because we need to go through that process and evaluate all that.
And Chief, the last question I have is there's been a suggestion, and maybe you can flesh this out, that Ecovista has some sort of a methane process where they are converting that methane into energy. And my understanding is, I guess the first question I have is, we have an air permit for those sources, correct? Are these compounds, benzene and ethylbenzene, part of the parameters in that permit, or do you know?
So I believe benzene is, ethylbenzene may not be. It may be in their permit. However, I do think that they may have a qualifier that it's actually not in the gas that they utilize. And so we're looking into that to make sure, but benzene and ethylbenzene are identified in the permit.
There's been a suggestion made that that process was not operational during this study. Do you have any idea whether or not that's correct or incorrect?
To my knowledge, that is incorrect, because we received the data log from the plant and it only indicated a downtime of 2 hours the first morning of the study. That they reported a power outage. And so during that time, it takes a little bit, but once the plant, the RNG plant shuts down, then the process flares kick on. And so the flares ran for a couple hours while the plant was down, and then the plant kicked back on and the flares went down.
Chief, thank you so much. Commissioners, those were my questions.
Thank you.
All right, next we will have public comments. I have one card from Mr. Kenneth Lovett. Mr. Lovett, good morning. And anyone else who's here to speak, please fill out a card. You're welcome to come forward and speak when you're called.
Good morning. My name's Kenneth Lovett from Washington County. A couple of things I want to point out. Sulfur dioxide on December 23rd, the National Guard conducted testing. It was identified. February 24th, ADE conducts testing through the company CETA. There was some more stuff identified. April 24th, CETA conducts more comprehensive testing. That is the biggest test we've had until lately. The test that was lately has a lot of concerns from citizens on issues of proper operational issues in the plant due to common sense, and, you know, being able to hear it, being able to smell it, all that kind of stuff. A lot of y'all are new. I'm gonna pass this around. Y'all can pass it through as you do the motion, if you don't mind, and then I'll. There's a big difference between odors and vapors. If you can drive down the road and you can't breathe, those aren't odors, those are vapors. In the past week, I've attended several public meetings this week. The Northwest Arkansas Council is using a group called Growing Home NWA as the strategist to grow the region of Northwest Arkansas by adding density. Growing Home was asked, is NWA waste being considered in NWA future planning? If so, how? If not, why? Their statement was, "We don't address waste in this study. Waste is left up to the waste management companies. There's an issue. Waste management companies need to be regulated and included in the regional planning processes. ADQ has not addressed, in my opinion, any issues occurring at Waste Management EcoVista in the past 5 years. The price we pay for allowing waste to continue to be self-controlled by waste management companies is a game of roulette. Complacency and kicking the can down the road does not only cost now, but that cost continues to increase as the lack of regulation continues and the medical cost of citizens grow as time proves the fatality rate from the exposure over years. Both air quality and solid waste are regulated by government, specifically by you, the PC&EC. This process is failing. ADEQ and the state of Arkansas need to quit looking for a way out and address the problem, my community, which is EcoVista emissions and the effect on human lives. The area within the 3-mile radius of the environmental issues created by Waste Management EcoVista, in my opinion, should be blocked from additional development of any kind. The Planning Commission boards of Washington County and Tawnytown need to require the hazards to be mitigated before continuing developments that expose additional exposure to unknowing people moving into this area. It takes people and government entities to understand these hazards and hold ADEQ responsible for the regulations they continue to ignore while accepting the tonnage fees from waste management over the health and safety of citizens in our area. Thursday night, 9/25/2025, the Washington County Planning Board meeting, 2 subdivisions were approved to continue within this 3-mile radius. Communication between the state, Washington County, and Tawnytown on this issue needs to be a priority. My answer to the issue currently is to shut down the landfill, route trash to an appropriate approved facility, and negotiate prices within a proper level to continue service. Install proper engineering controls on emission points from the plants, both waste to energy and RNG, and address cover with new technology, which carbon chicken, a new process manufactured in Washington County, should be consulted. In Arkansas, any interested party, including individual citizens, associations, and government subdivisions, can request a regulation change in the Arkansas Code of Regulations, ACR, by formally submitting a request to Arkansas Pollution Control and Ecology Commission. I am formally requesting a regulation change. This regulation has not been formally reviewed and updated since 2007. Stamped as filed on April 26, 2003 and adopted March 28, 2007. There's been a lot of changes over 20 years. All emission points at EcoVista specifically should be tested and reviewed for levels of each substance emitted at EcoVista. First, as these chemicals compared to RSL regional screen levels set by the EPA. Proper conditions should then be listed in the regulation as individual emissions and not included in the total VOC emissions standard that fails to address the issues we continue to be exposed to in our community. It's a serious issue. I'm affected every day. My family's sick, and it's a lifetime issue. And we need something done now. Thank you.
Mr. Lovett, one question. Have you provided these photographs to the department?
Several times, whenever I send in reports for different times, different issues. That time my eye was about to pop out of my head. All they do is say, no problem, and move on. And that's it. That's where it dies right there. That investigation report is never looked at again.
Mr. Lovett, you made a request for the commission to initiate rulemaking. I just want you to be aware. the commission doesn't have the ability to initiate rulemaking on its own. If you look at if you look on the website and you look at and I don't know what the new number is under the code of Arkansas rules. But under the old Rule 8, there's a formal process in terms of rulemaking and how it's done. One way is for DEQ to initiate rulemaking, and the other way is for a third party like yourself to initiate rulemaking. But the commission doesn't do it unilaterally. It has to come from those two sources. And to add to additional hurdles, in order for rulemaking to be initiated, there has to be an approval from the governor first, and that's through an executive order. And then there also has to be approval from a legislative committee, because I don't know how many sessions ago it was, there was a initiated act that allows the legislature to vote yes or no to a rulemaking proposal. So the first two prongs is get the governor's buy-in, then the legislature's buy-in, and then you have to have DEQ or somebody like yourself go through the actual process of rulemaking. I didn't want you to leave the podium thinking that we could do it unilaterally and just go ahead. There's a process in place. And 20 years ago, it was actually easier to do rulemaking. Right now, it's hard. So anyway, just wanted to let you know.
That's Mr. Lovett, Judge Mold's exactly right, but third-party rulemaking is not an unusual event. I mean, it's been going on for many, many years. My experience, most of it has been related to Clean Water Act discharge numbers, from my experience. But it is out there. There is a process. It's out there. He's exactly right. But
I've read up on it. And then I've seen that since the rules changed, like Judge Moulton says, there has been zero.
Most of the time that rulemaking has, in my experience, has been done by facilities wanting to change the numeric value at their discharge pipe, so to speak, to change that number based on data that they can prove and show. And
I realized that acrolein in this past test was in the background, but whatever it is that affects me driving down the road where I can't even breathe is coming from Waste Management, EcoVista. And I believe I showed y'all a picture of that incinerator. I believe if they sampled that incinerator for acrolein, you would find it, in my opinion. But it's ridiculous that citizens have to go through all this process when y'all know, or I feel like there is a problem there. But because of legal issues and new rules and lawyers standing up there and trying to cover their high-dollar companies and not worrying about the citizens is where the problem's coming, And I come every week, every month or whenever y'all do it, and I'm still ignored. There's a way to get this done without me standing here and spending my time all my life and, on this issue. It's frustrating.
Thank you.
That's all I can say. It's serious. It's frustrating. It's affecting us all. Some people don't realize it. They will.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, sir. All right. Are there any other public comments? Anyone else? All right. If not, Judge Bolton, your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of issues. First one, to underscore what you just stated about third-party rulemaking and how common it was back in the day when you were actually working for the agency. We would probably get one of those every quarter, at least. It seemed like. I'd have to go back and look, but it's been a number of years since we've had a third-party rulemaking request. It's been a bit. The only item that I've got to inform the commission about is, and I was a little bit negligent, I should have forwarded this. Mr. McAllister sent me on Wednesday the order issued by Judge, and I may be mispronouncing his street, in Washington County Circuit Court, dismissing the city of Tawny Town's appeal against this body's decision upholding DEQ's permitting decision for Echo Vista. So I will forward that to you after this meeting. It is a 2-page order. It's about as perfunctory an order as you ever want to see. The judge just recites what the standard of review is at the circuit court level and finds that the city didn't meet its burden and dismiss the case. Now, after that, I think the date of the order was entered was September 22nd, I believe. So I believe under the rules, the city has 30 days in which to file an appeal of that. More likely than not, it would go to the Court of Appeals if that happens. But it's possible, conceivable that the Supreme Court might take it as well. So we'll just see what the city would like to do moving forward. I'll try to answer any questions, but I was not present for the arguments. That was handled by County Town as well as DEQ Council. But they are present if you get any questions about this decision. And with that, I'm done.
Any other commissioners have any other comments or questions? All right. That said, I believe our agenda has been fulfilled and we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.